On live national television, Jimmy Fallon looked Donald Trump dead in the eyes, slammed the wedding photo album on the desk, and calmly blew up the biggest scandal of Trump's entire presidency, exposing the shocking truth that the boy the world knew as Barron Trump wasn't really Melania's son at all. He was Ivanka's, and the man sitting across from him wasn't just his father, he was also his grandfather. It all started with a single comment that hit like a bomb in the middle of a congressional hearing. Jasmine Crockett, the sharp-tongued Texas congresswoman everyone knew for calling things exactly as she saw them, stood up and dropped a line that nobody expected. She looked straight into the cameras and said, "Barron Trump might not be the kid people thought he was." She just laid it out there plain and simple. The boy everyone called Donald and Melania's youngest son could actually be Ivanka's. The rumor didn't die overnight like most political gossip. It got even heavier when word spread that Barack Obama had quietly referenced the same idea during a closed-door talk with some donors. He didn't come out and accuse anybody on live TV, but people close to the conversation said he mentioned how family stories in politics sometimes hid more than they showed, and the timing around Barron's birth raised eyebrows. Obama's name carried weight, so even folks who wanted to laugh it off suddenly started wondering, was there really something off about the official story? The whispers moved fast from Capitol Hill offices to late-night strategy calls, and then into regular conversations at coffee shops and family dinners across the country. Then Trump himself lit the fuse without even meaning to. Late one evening, he fired off a tweet that was classic Trump. "Fake news about my family again? They'll say anything to hurt us? Sad." He didn't name the rumor directly, but everyone knew exactly what he was talking about. The tweet went viral in minutes. Social media lit up with clips of Crockett's comment, side-by-side photos of Barron next to Ivanka, and people digging up old interviews where family dynamics looked a little too close. One night, Jimmy Fallon was sitting in his office going through the usual prep for The Tonight Show when an unmarked envelope showed up on his desk. No return address, just a USB drive inside with a short note that said, "Listen before you decide." Fallon almost tossed it, figuring it was another crank thing, but something made him plug it in. The audio was grainy, like it came from a hidden phone in a private dining room back in 2018. Donald Trump's voice clear enough, talking to a small group during a family dinner. He said something that made Fallon sit straight up. "He's my grandson, but he's the son of my daughter. That's how it is." Trump laughed a little after, like it was no big deal. But the words hung there. Fallon played it 3 times in a row, his stomach twisting. This wasn't some edited fake. The voice matched, the context matched, and the date lined up right around when Barron was still a kid and the family was keeping things tight. He kept thinking about that short clip of Trump's voice saying those words so casually. Contrai qua congaitoi. It sounded wrong in the worst way, and the more Fallon turned it over, the more he realized this wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal, messy, and the kind of thing that could change how people saw the most powerful family in America. He still hadn't decided what to do with it on live television. Fallon started writing the script for the show. He kept it simple and direct. No big speeches, no dramatic music cues. He wrote down the exact words he planned to say. "Mr. President, America needs the truth about Barron's parentage." He practiced in front of the mirror, making sure his voice stayed calm even when he imagined Trump getting angry. Fallon knew this could blow up in his face. Trump wasn't the type to sit quietly when cornered, but he made a firm decision right there. No matter what happened, he wouldn't cut the segment short. He wouldn't let threats or shouting stop him from laying everything out. The studio lights in NBC's Studio 8H in New York City were shining brighter than usual that night. Jimmy Fallon had invited President Donald Trump back to the stage. Fallon stood up and looked at everything laid out on his desk. The wedding album with those 3 explosive photos, the 18-second video, the old audio from 2018, and now the fresh recording of Trump trying to shut him down. It felt like he was holding a loaded gun. He took a deep breath and told himself to stay steady. The audience tonight would be watching live, and once he opened that album on stage, there was no going back. The rumor that started as quiet whispers was about to become something much bigger. Fallon slipped the album under his arm, grabbed his notes, and headed toward the studio. The crowd was already buzzing when Donald Trump walked out to the familiar theme music. Jimmy Fallon greeted him with the usual handshake and big smile, keeping things light at first. Trump settled into the guest chair, looking confident in his dark suit. For the first 10 minutes, the conversation stayed easy. Trump leaned forward and started bragging about his 2025 agenda. He talked about the new trade deals he was pushing, how he was cracking down on immigration, and how the economy was already looking stronger under his watch. He threw in a few jokes about the fake news media, and even got a couple of laughs from the audience. Fallon played along, nodding and throwing in some quick one-liners to keep the energy up. It felt like any other late-night interview, relaxed, entertaining, nothing too serious. Then, right in the middle of a sentence about foreign policy, Fallon suddenly stopped talking. He didn't finish his thought. He just sat there looking straight at Trump. Then, without a word, Fallon reached down beside his chair and lifted a large, leather-bound photo album onto the table between them. He placed it carefully, right in front of the cameras. The album looked old and important. Trump's eyes locked onto it immediately. Fallon opened the cover slowly, turning to the first page. The photo showed Trump and Ivanka on their wedding day, standing close together, smiling. It was intimate in a way that felt off for a father and daughter. Trump tried to laugh it off. He forced a big smile, but his hand gripped the arm of the chair so tight his knuckles turned white. The forced laugh came out awkward, almost strained. He shifted in his seat like he was suddenly uncomfortable. Fallon looked him dead in the eyes and spoke clearly, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. President," he said, "America needs the truth about Barron's parentage." The words landed like a punch. For a split second, the entire studio went completely quiet. Then Trump let out a loud, over-the-top laugh, trying hard to brush it away. "What? Come on, Jimmy," he said, his voice cracking just a little at the end. It didn't sound confident. It sounded nervous. He waved his hand like the question was ridiculous, but his laugh didn't reach his eyes. The audience in the studio started whispering. You could hear the low murmurs spreading through the rows. Did he really just ask that? Is this really happening? A few people pulled out their phones, already texting friends. The energy in the room had flipped from fun to tense in just a few seconds. Trump kept trying to play it cool. He chuckled again, louder this time, and shook his head. "This is crazy. You're really going there." But his voice wavered on the last word. His smile looked glued on, and his fingers were still digging into the chair like he was trying to hold himself together. Fallon didn't smile back. He didn't laugh. He just sat there, steady, waiting for a real answer, while the album lay open between them like a loaded gun. The whispers in the studio grew a little louder. People were leaning toward each other, eyes wide. No one expected Jimmy Fallon, the guy known for silly games and celebrity impressions, to drop a question this heavy on live television. Trump's forced laugh started to die down, and for the first time that night, he looked genuinely rattled. The easy, bragging mood from just minutes earlier was completely gone. Fallon didn't waste any time. He reached forward and started flipping through the album page by page, slow and deliberate, making sure the cameras caught every single photo. The first few shots showed Trump and Ivanka smiling at the wedding reception, but as he kept turning, the pictures got more and more uncomfortable. He stopped on the fifth one and let it sit there under the bright studio lights. In this shot, Ivanka was practically leaning into Trump's chest, her hand resting on his shoulder, both of them looking at each other like there was nobody else in the room. Another photo showed her sitting close on a couch, head tilted toward him with a soft smile that didn't look like a daughter's. The third one captured them in a quiet corner, Trump's arm wrapped around her waist a little too tightly. Fallon pointed at each one without saying much at first. The studio audience was dead silent now. You could hear people breathing heavier, shifting in their seats, trying to process what they were seeing. Trump leaned in, his face tight. He forced another laugh and waved his hand at the album. "Come on, Jimmy. We took those for fun. It's just family love. You people don't understand how close we are." His voice sounded defensive, like he was trying to convince himself as much as everyone else. Fallon didn't answer right away. He just sat there, letting the silence stretch out for several long seconds. The quiet made everything feel heavier. No jokes, no quick comeback. Just the photos staring back at Trump and the whole country watching live. Trump's smile started to look fake, and his eyes darted between the album and Fallon like he was waiting for someone to laugh and end the bit. Then Fallon reached under the desk and pressed play on a small recorder. The grainy audio from 2018 filled the studio speakers. Trump's own voice came through loud and clear. "He's my grandson, but he's the son of my daughter. That's how it is." The words hit like a slap. Trump shot up out of his chair so fast it scraped loudly against the floor. His face turned bright red, veins popping on his forehead. "What the hell is that?" he barked, pointing at the speakers. The audience gasped. A few people in the front row actually covered their mouths. Trump looked furious and caught off guard at the same time, his usual swagger completely gone. Fallon stayed calm, his voice steady and low. He looked Trump right in the eye and said, "I have proof of your illegal relationship, Mr. President." The words landed hard. Trump's mouth opened, but for a second nothing came out. Then he exploded. "Turn the cameras off, right now!" he shouted, his voice booming across the studio. He gestured wildly toward the crew, face twisted in anger. "Cut the feed! This is bullshit!" Some of the stage lights flickered as the crew froze, unsure what to do. Fallon didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He simply shook his head and said quietly, "We're live. Mr. President, the American people are watching." Then he reached over and calmly turned another page in the album. That's when the final photo hit like a knockout punch. It was a close-up shot taken right after Barron was born, a baby picture someone had slipped into the wedding album later. On the side of the infant's neck was a small, distinct birthmark. It was shaped exactly like the one everyone had seen on Ivanka's neck in dozens of public photos over the years. The similarity was impossible to miss. Trump stared at it, his body swaying like he'd been punched in the gut. He grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself and nearly fell back into his chair. His face went from red to pale in seconds. The studio audience erupted into loud whispers and shocked murmurs. A couple of people even stood up halfway, eyes wide. Trump pointed at the photo, his hand shaking. "That doesn't prove anything," he yelled, but his voice cracked badly this time. He looked smaller suddenly, like the fight was draining out of him even as the anger boiled over. Fallon kept his cool, sitting back slightly while the weight of everything, the photos, the audio, that birthmark, hung heavy in the air. The president was breathing hard now, chest rising and falling fast, staring at the open album like it had betrayed him. The tension in the studio was thick. No one was laughing anymore. Trump's face was still red from the birthmark photo. Then he suddenly pointed a thick finger straight at Jimmy Fallon. His eyes were wide with rage. "You'll regret this for the rest of your life," he shouted, voice booming through the studio. "I'm warning you, Jimmy. You think you can pull this crap on live TV? You're finished. Your career is over. I'll make sure of it." He kept jabbing his finger, stepping closer to the desk, his whole body shaking with anger. The threats poured out fast and loud. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I'll sue you. I'll sue the network. I'll bury you." The studio audience sat frozen, some leaning back in their seats like they wanted to disappear. No one had ever seen a president lose it this badly on a late-night show. Fallon didn't flinch. He stayed seated, hands resting calmly on the desk, and looked Trump straight in the eye. His voice was quiet but rock steady. "You can threaten me all you want, Mr. President," he said, "but you can't silence what's already out there." The words hit Trump like cold water. For a second, he just stared, breathing hard. Then, in the heat of the moment, something slipped out that he clearly never meant to say. "She was there for me when no one else was," Trump blurted, his voice cracking halfway through. The entire studio went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Every single person, crew, audience, even the cameraman, froze. The words hung in the air like smoke. Fallon didn't miss a beat. He leaned forward slightly and asked, sharp and clear, "Who is she, Mr. President?" Trump realized what he had just said, and his eyes went wide. He tried to backpedal fast, waving his hands wildly. "I mean, the family, we've always been close. Melania was busy. Ivanka helped with everything. That's what families do. Barron is my son. This is all lies." But the more he talked, the worse it got. His story kept changing. One second he said Melania was the mother all along. The next he claimed it was just emotional support. He mixed up dates and details, repeating himself and contradicting what he'd said only minutes earlier. The audience could hear the cracks forming. Whispers started again, louder this time. People were shaking their heads, eyes glued to the stage. Trump's usual smooth talking had completely fallen apart, and everyone could see it. Fallon stayed quiet for a moment, letting Trump dig himself deeper. Then he reached for the control panel on his desk and nodded to the crew. "Let's show the American people one more thing," he said calmly. The big screen behind them lit up with the 18-second video from the former family photographer. There was Ivanka, hugging Trump tightly in a hallway, her face buried in his shoulder, tears running down her cheeks. Her voice came through clear and emotional. "Dad, we can't keep hiding him. He deserves to know the truth." The clip played on loop for a few seconds so nobody could miss it. Trump lost it completely. "Turn that off!" he roared and lunged forward toward the giant screen like he wanted to smash it with his bare hands. Two Secret Service agents moved instantly, stepping in front of him and grabbing his arms to hold him back. "Get off me!" Trump yelled, struggling against them, face twisted in fury. The agents held firm, guiding him back a few steps while he kept shouting. The studio audience erupted. Some gasped, some stood up, phones out recording everything. The chaos was raw and real. Trump looked completely out of control, red-faced and furious, while Fallon sat there unmoved, watching it all unfold. The contrast was brutal. On one side, the President of the United States was being physically restrained on live television. On the other, Jimmy Fallon remained calm and composed, like he had expected every second of this explosion. The video kept playing in the background, Ivanka's crying voice repeating, "We can't keep hiding him." Trump finally stopped fighting the agents but kept glaring at Fallon with pure hatred. His chest was heaving, sweat visible on his forehead. The threats, the slip-up, the family story that made no sense, and now the video. Everything had piled up into one massive, ugly confrontation. Fallon looked at Trump, who was still breathing hard after the video, and the struggle with the agents. The studio was completely on edge. Fallon reached under the desk one last time and nodded to the control room. "There's one more thing America needs to see," he said quietly. The big screen lit up again with a short 12-second clip. It was raw, shaky footage from right after Barron was born. Ivanka was holding the tiny newborn in her arms, tears streaming down her face. She looked straight at Trump, who was standing just off camera, and said clearly, her voice breaking, "Dad, you're the father of my son." The words echoed through the studio speakers. Ivanka kissed the baby's head and whispered it again, softer, "The father of my son." The clip ended, but the damage was done. Gasps and shocked whispers swept through the audience like a wave. Trump's legs seemed to give out. He sank heavily back into his chair, shoulders slumped, staring at the now black screen. For the first time all night, the fight drained completely from his face. His voice cracked wide open, raw and broken. "You have no right," he said, the words catching in his throat. "This is my family. You have no right to do this." Tears welled up in his eyes, real ones, and his lower lip trembled. Millions watching at home saw something they had never seen before. Donald Trump looking small, vulnerable, and completely exposed on live television. The tough, loud president who always dominated every room was crumbling right in front of them. The studio went dead quiet again, everyone stunned by the sudden show of weakness. Fallon stood up slowly, picked up the heavy wedding album, and closed it with a deliberate, quiet thud. He looked straight into the camera and said, calm as ever, "The American people deserve to know. That's all I had to say." No shouting, no victory dance, just those simple words. He set the album down gently and took a small step back, signaling the segment was over. Trump exploded one final time. He shot up from the chair and lunged toward the nearest microphone, face twisted in fury again. "I'm suing you, Fallon," he screamed, voice hoarse and shaking. "I'm suing the network. This is defamation. This is illegal. You'll pay for this." He kept yelling, spit flying, demanding the show be shut down immediately. The Secret Service agents moved in closer, trying to calm him, but Trump kept shouting into the mic, threatening lawsuits and revenge. Fallon stayed silent for a second, then pressed a button on his desk. The pre-show phone recording started playing through the studio speakers. Trump's own voice filled the room again. "Don't you dare go there tonight. You'll regret it for a long time." The threat sounded even colder now after everything that had happened. Trump's face went ghost white. All the color drained out in an instant. He froze mid-sentence, mouth open, staring at Fallon like he'd been stabbed in the back. The studio audience erupted, first in shocked silence, then loud, thunderous applause that rolled through the seats like a wave. People clapped hard, some cheering, some standing up. The sound was deafening. The big screens behind the stage began to dim slowly. The lights softened as the show started to wrap. In the fading glow, Fallon leaned toward the camera one last time and spoke softly, almost under his breath, but loud enough for the microphones to catch it. "Truth doesn't care how powerful you are." The words hung in the air as the screen went completely black. The final shot showed Trump storming off the stage in a full rage. He shoved past one of the agents, face red and furious again, yelling something the microphones barely caught. The audience kept clapping as he disappeared into the wings, Secret Service trailing behind him. The Tonight Show logo came up, but the energy in the studio stayed electric. People were still on their feet, talking loudly, some shaking their heads in disbelief. What had started as a normal interview had ended in total chaos. Photos, audio, video, a broken denial, and a president caught completely off guard. Jimmy Fallon had done what almost no one else dared. He had put the uncomfortable truth right in front of the most powerful man in the country and refused to back down. The night would be remembered for a long time, not for jokes or laughs, but for the raw, explosive moment when the rumor finally exploded into the open and nothing could ever be the same again.